Welcome to our channel Psyverge. Have you ever wondered how many of your choices are actually yours? How often do you pause and ask yourself, did I really want this? Or did someone quietly plant that desire in my mind? What if most of what you believe, what you value, even what you fear, was carefully shaped by people who know exactly how to influence you without you ever noticing? That's not a paranoid thought. That's how the psychology of influence works. Subtle, invisible, and frighteningly effective. We like to think we're independent thinkers, rational, conscious of our decisions. But the truth is, our minds are full of shortcuts. What psychologists call heuristics. They're mental algorithms that help us make quick decisions, often without full awareness. And that's exactly where manipulators thrive. They don't need to force you to do anything. They only need to subtly frame your choices so that you willingly pick what they wanted you to pick all along. Philosophers like Nietzsche warned about this long ago. He argued that most people live as herd animals, not because they consciously choose conformity, but because it's safer. The herd provides comfort, approval, identity. And once you crave those things, you're vulnerable to whoever controls the herd's beliefs. Nietzsche called it the morality of the weak. A system where the dominant few control the many, not through violence, but through shared values and unquestioned narratives. The scariest kind of control is the one you don't even recognize as control. Now ask yourself, why do advertisements work so well? Why does political propaganda spread so quickly? Why do people passionately defend beliefs they barely understand? Because influence operates through emotions first, logic second. The brain's primitive parts, the amygdala, the limbic system, react instantly to fear, desire, status, belonging. Once those emotional triggers are activated, your rational brain often kicks in too late, mainly to justify decisions you've already made. This is what psychologists call motivated reasoning. You think you're thinking, but you're really defending a decision that was emotionally triggered moments before. And the people who study dark psychology know this. They carefully design words, images, and social cues to trigger your emotions before you even realize what's happening. A simple example. Scarcity. Tell someone that a product is almost sold out, and watch how quickly their desire skyrockets. The product didn't change. Your brain did. It suddenly fears loss more than it values gain. This is loss aversion, one of the most powerful levers of influence. And it's everywhere, from marketing to dating, from religion to politics. But it gets darker. Consider the principle of authority. We are wired to obey perceived authority figures, whether they're experts, celebrities, religious leaders, or even just people in uniforms. Stanley Milgram's famous experiment proved how easily ordinary people will obey harmful orders when an authority figure calmly tells them to do so. The unsettling part? Most participants genuinely believed they were simply following the right path. They didn't feel manipulated. That's the terrifying beauty of invisible influence. It hides behind your sense of duty, your desire to be good, your fear of stepping out of line. And then there's the tactic of social proof. When you see others doing something, you instinctively assume it's safe, correct, or desirable. If everyone in your community supports an idea, you feel an almost physical discomfort resisting it. That's herd psychology at its finest. Even your silence can be a form of submission, as philosopher Etienne de la Boétie wrote centuries ago in his work on voluntary servitude. People enslave themselves, not through chains, but through silent consent to the prevailing narratives. Have you ever noticed how influencers, politicians, and even spiritual leaders carefully craft identities for you? They tell you who you are, what your tribe believes, what your enemies look like. Once you buy into that identity, you defend it fiercely. This is identity-based manipulation. It's not just that you hold certain beliefs. Your sense of self becomes tied to them. Any challenge feels like a personal attack. The more deeply someone can fuse your identity with a belief system, the less likely you are to question it. They don't control your behavior directly. They control who you think you are. Even in personal relationships, these dark psychological strategies show up. Think about love bombing, overwhelming someone with affection, gifts, praise, and attention early on. It creates a powerful dopamine rush. You feel special, chosen. But once your emotional defenses drop, the manipulator begins shifting into control mode, isolating you, subtly criticizing you, making you question your own judgment. The initial affection wasn't love, it was bait. You were conditioned to crave their approval, and once hooked, you fear losing it. That fear of loss is often more controlling than any external force. And here's where it gets even more chilling. The illusion of choice. You feel free because you're given options, but those options are carefully curated. The range of acceptable views, products, lifestyles, even moral positions. They're often pre-selected by unseen hands. Philosopher Michel Foucault called this soft power. True power isn't always about prohibiting action. It's about shaping what people consider thinkable in the first place. You don't need to censor forbidden thoughts if people never develop them. Now let's ask the uncomfortable question. Are we truly free thinkers, or are we participants in elaborate systems of invisible influence? Mass media, algorithms, cultural norms, peer pressure, groupthink. None of it feels coercive. That's what makes it so powerful. The more subtle the influence, the more you believe it was your own choice. And once you believe that, you defend it even more passionately. Social media adds another layer to this dark web. Algorithms amplify the content you engage with, slowly feeding you more of the same perspectives, reinforcing your existing beliefs, and pushing you deeper into ideological bubbles. It's not a conspiracy. It's simply the mathematics of engagement. But it creates echo chambers where dissenting views are filtered out, making your current worldview feel increasingly absolute. When everyone you see agrees with you, your confidence grows. And with confidence comes rigidity. You stop questioning, and you start defending. This is how radicalization often begins. Not with violence, but with quiet, incremental validation. Even silence can be a powerful manipulative tool. Manipulators often use what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, rewarding you unpredictably. Compliments followed by silence, praise followed by withdrawal. It keeps you off balance, always chasing approval, wondering what you did wrong. Casinos use this same method with slot machines. The uncertainty itself becomes addictive. You keep pulling the lever, hoping for another hit of reward. Relationships built on this pattern can feel impossible to leave because your brain is hooked on the uncertainty itself. And yet, despite all of this, most people believe they are immune to manipulation. This is what psychologists call the bias blind spot. We recognize how others are influenced, but we see ourselves as rational exceptions. That very confidence makes us even more susceptible. Because once you stop guarding your mind, anyone can walk in and rearrange your thoughts. But awareness changes everything. Once you start recognizing these invisible forces, you begin to see the strings being pulled. The next time someone frames a limited set of choices, ask yourself, who created this frame? When an authority figure speaks, ask, what interests are they serving? When you feel emotionally triggered, pause and analyze. Am I reacting to facts or to carefully designed stimuli? You can't avoid all influence. None of us can. But you can become harder to manipulate. You can train yourself to pause, to question, to think a few steps deeper. True freedom isn't in rejecting every suggestion. It's in understanding when you're being led and choosing whether or not to follow. Because the darkest psychology isn't the one that controls you with force. It's the one that makes you think you were never controlled at all.